Good evening. This is the Tuesday, January 9th, 2024, meeting of the Planning Commission. And we will start with our call to order roll call.
Thank you. Stiles.
Here.
Greene.
Here.
Zaremski.
Here.
DeVore Leonard.
Here.
Also present is Planning and Zoning Administrator Meg Leatherman.
Okay, and in reviewing our agenda, our first item, Conditional Use Application by Darren Gilley, has been withdrawn. It may come back to us later, but that's withdrawn. So that is a change. Any other changes to the agenda? Okay.
I do have one. If you folks are up for it, you could put into new business voting on chair.
Absolutely.
For this year.
Absolutely. Okay. Chair and vice chair. Okay, then we will review the minutes. We will not go through them page by page. Does anyone have any changes, questions, comments? If not, is there a move for approval?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, then we will move on to communications. We have a letter from Carol Cottom, who's opposed to transient guest lodging. I think everybody's had a chance to read that. And then it says planning administrator regarding housing committee information.
Yeah, as part of the packet, I provided just the Housing Advisory Committee that we just kicked back off 2 months ago. I provided our organizational framework for your information purposes, and if you have questions, you can email me or call me about it later, but just to keep you guys in the loop on what's going on and what our goals and priorities were.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, do we have a report from the Active Transportation Committee?
Nothing currently to report.
Okay, how about from council?
Yeah, so the new council member, Trish Gustafson, was sworn in, and then council voted Kevin Stokes as the council president, and then I'm the vice president. The council authorized the interim village manager to contract with local realtor Allison Moody to actively market the CBE land. Council authorized the interim village manager to move forward with the sale of renewable energy credits and purchase of green E-Recs, which will, I think, officially bring us to 100% renewable energy in Yellow Spring. So, okay. Burns, so the interim village manager let the council know that 6 of the available lots in the Spring Meadows development have sold, and then reported that the team has submitted a grant application to ODOT for sidewalk replacement to cover a large portion of the Safe Routes to School plan, and the final application will be submitted in February for the $1.4 million grant. And then council will hold a retreat at the end of January to discuss village goals, among other things. One of the other likely things is going to be talking about commissions. So I think I've mentioned that the last meeting that we'll be formally setting the primary and alternate here in the coming weeks. So just fair warning.
And Spring Meadows is the Finney Farm?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you're staying on, is that right, on planning?
It's not official yet. Okay. We'll be figuring that out probably at that goals or the retreat time, but sometime soon.
Okay, thank you. Okay, do you want to report anything from the Housing Committee?
Well, I hadn't thought about that. I don't know, Meg, is there anything?
There's not too much to report. I mean, we basically decided that for the next couple of months, we're going to just focus specifically on, oh, I'm sorry, you're on it too. I just realized.
Why are you kicking that to us? You can do it, Susan.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
We decided that we're going to focus on developing a housing strategy or plan for the village, with thinking about just the village solely, not other organizations, and how we can make a meaningful impact in the short term and long term.
Okay. Anything to add, Gavin?
I don't think so. Anything to add, Susan?
No. Okay, thank you. Okay, then we are to the point in our agenda where we have citizens' comments. So these are comments on anything that we're not having a public hearing. We have 2 public hearings because, as I mentioned, the one has withdrawn. So if you would like to make a public comment, if you'll come forward, if you'll introduce yourself and give your comments.
Hi, my name's Mitzi Miller, and I am on the Active Transportation Committee. But I just wanted to recognize Meg for working with our group, which is the Citizen Action Group for Safe Sidewalks, and the accomplishments we've made within the last year. We are down to 15 homes that are out of compliance right now in the whole village. So that's a really amazing accomplishment, and we're really working, especially in the next year, as more of an educational campaign to educate our neighbors and property owners of how important it is to keep our sidewalks safe.
Thank you, Mitzi.
Thank you.
I have a quick question just to add it to this. You said you're down to how many homes?
15.
15. When you started, how many were out of compliance? 150.
2 years ago.
Wow.
That's impressive, very impressive. Thank you. Other comments? Ellen?
What's the other public hearing?
There will be 2 public hearings, one for a conditional use for a transient guest lodging, and the other one is for a zoning map amendment.
And there are agendas out, there should be agendas out on the table. Sorry. Go ahead.
So I have a question and then a comment. I'm
Introduce
Ellen
yourself.
Hoover.
Ellen, introduce
Live-
yourself.
Yeah. I'm Ellen Hoover. I live on the corner of Dayton and Walnut Street. And my question is about, and my comments are about the transient guest lodging that was discussed at the last meeting. I have a question, which is, I didn't see it on the agenda today, so I assume that's for a future meeting. Is that correct?
Yes.
So my comments will be really brief. But what I wanted to say in terms...
Which one are you referring to?
I think she's just talking about broadly.
When we were talking
Okay.
broadly
Well,
about-
broadly, you were discussing, somebody proposed revisiting the regulations and reducing them or restricting them. We're looking at the 500 feet radius, I think it was, from other Airbnbs. That's one regulation that was mentioned. In our neighborhood, we are saturated with Airbnbs, and a fair number of those were grandfathered in, were before the regulations. Of the ones that came afterwards, they are owner-occupied and are compliant as far as we know, for the most part, I think. The comment I have about the regulations is the 500 feet has really not done a whole lot to protect our neighborhood from the saturation of new Airbnbs. But I'm not suggesting it be eliminated. I'm suggesting you be very careful about how you draw that line, how you choose it. Because we are, as I say, we are saturated, but a lot of those came in after the 500 feet. So, and I think it needs...
Before the 500 feet.
Before and after, because we had some that were grandfathered. I don't know the number. You have 11 now that were grandfathered, I believe.
Yeah.
I would guess 4 or 5, maybe, were
But-
grandfathered, and the rest were after.
But any that would have come after would have been subjected to 500
They are,
feet.
but
So
just the way the
please go
numbers
back and forth,
work.
'cause she's got a limited time, so let her do
Okay, excuse me.
Yeah, it's very, yes, your point is accurate, but the 500 feet has not protected us all that well. We're still saturated. So I would ask you to look at these regulations very carefully with a lot of research on how it affects historical and older parts of town, the more congested areas. My daughter has two Airbnbs. I understand the issues. I owned the property before she bought it. I didn't operate an Airbnb. That's not my bandwidth, but I understand all the issues that she deals with as an owner. I'm asking that you protect the older neighborhoods. We are really saturated with a lot of issues. And the unregulated I'll let it go. I'll come back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we ask questions?
You should not really back and forth during citizen comments. If you want to set it as an agenda item for another place,
Okay.
the problem is that
Yeah.
no one else knew that this would come up, and so if you you engage,
Yeah,
then
right.
you've got people missing out, so.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, thank you. Other public comments?
Yeah, Ray.
Yes,
So this probably tags on to what Ellen was talking about.
and introduce yourself.
I'm Steve Deal. I live at 131 North Walnut, about half a block from Ellen. This is a map that our group, the Neighborhood Action Group for Walnut and Dayton Street, put together. The purple ones are the transient guest lodging. Our homes are the stars, so you can see we're kind of outnumbered on our committee compared to the number of transient guest lodging. I think that there's some good things to think about in terms of what you can accomplish this. If you look online and do some searches, there's a good study from Harvard Business Review that talks about the benefits of reducing regulation on transient guest lodging. However, those are more in line with bigger communities where you're going to have you're going to want to stimulate retail in that area in depressed neighborhoods. We don't have that. And it does, they acknowledge that the Airbnbs tend to increase the rental price by 20% in areas where they have a good penetration. So if your goal, I guess what I want to say is, be careful what your goal is if you're going to revisit these regulations, because not only are we concerned about the potential for crime and the degradation to the social fabric of our neighborhood, because there'll be a lot of people there we don't recognize if more are allowed in our area, but also you may be pricing people out of the market when you're trying to focus on putting in affordable housing. So most of the studies say it's not an easy balance, but be very careful to think through what the implications are if you're going to revisit the regulation. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comments? Yes.
Good evening. My name's Michael Wilson, and I'm not totally clear on what the meeting's about yet, but I'm still trying to get there. At any rate, I live on Dayton Street, very close to King, and what I got in the mail sounded like rezoning for the spot across the street between the park and the home of Reva Douglas.
Yeah, that's,
So because that is a hearing, you will wait and then speak during the actual hearing.
So
Yes.
I'm at the wrong hearing? Is that what
No,
I'm...
you're at the right hearing.
You're at the right place. It's just that this is a portion for public comments for things that are not on our agenda. The property you're talking about is on our agenda. It's the second item.
Oh,
So if you'll just wait a few minutes,
so
then...
I'm just moving too fast. Well, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there are not other public comments, then we will go to the second item on our agenda, because as I mentioned, the first item, which was 410 North High Street, has withdrawn. So the one that we're going to be looking at is Frederick Peterson, and that is for 1114 Livermore Street. And Meg, I'll let you take over.
thanks. All right, this is a conditional use application for transient guest lodging at 114 Livermore Street, submitted by Frederick Peterson. Adjoining property owners were mailed a notice on December 28th Signs were posted on the property in the yard on December 29th, and a notice was published in the Yellow Springs newspaper on December 22nd. I also prepared a staff report that outlines the applicable code and staff findings, and that was sent to the Planning Commission and posted on our website on January 4th. The proposal includes sectioning off a portion of his home for guests while he stays in the other portion, so there will be no exterior construction involved in this project. It's all interior. The closest existing transient guest lodging unit is located at 1050 East Herman Street and is approximately 550 feet away. They're proposing to have 2 off-street parking spaces in the driveway, and a fire inspection is required prior to occupancy. Staff finds that the application meets all of the code criteria, and I'll stand for any questions, but I did want to provide the conditions of approval because it is a conditional approval. The first condition is no more than 2 adults shall occupy the accessory dwelling unit. The second, an inspection by the Miami Township Fire and Rescue for the installation of smoke and carbon monoxide detectors must accompany the application for transient guest lodging, and the detectors will be inspected by the Miami Township Fire and Rescue. Condition 3 is that transient guest lodging permits are non-transferable, and a change in the ownership of the property will void the permit. And condition 4, completion of the transient guest lodging registration with the finance department is required annually and prior to the initial occupancy. And then the final one, the 5th one, is a biannual reporting of all earnings must be submitted to the finance director annually, even if there are no earnings, and it's a 3% lodging tax due by April 15th and October 15th each year. And then I'll stand for any questions, and the applicant is here and can add to the...
How do we get the 2 adults? Where's that
That is directly from the code.
from the code?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Other questions for Meg? Okay, would Frederick Peterson want to come forward and talk? And just anything you want to say.
I don't really have any. But I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay.
I've had the property 10 years, and I'm not 100% sure at this time I'm going to be using it for those purposes. But I want to have that option in 2024 should I choose.
So is that a downstairs portion of the house?
The house has an original house that has 2 bedrooms upstairs and a living room, dining room, kitchen on the first floor. And then there's an annex off to the right that was added later.
Okay.
And that's the portion that I primarily stay in. The rental space would be used in the original house.
Okay, great.
Oh,
Any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
I have a question.
Sure.
Could you repeat the first condition, please?
Sure.
Meg?
And I will provide you all of these conditions in a report, and I'll give you the next steps to the registration form and stuff.
Okay, thank you.
The first condition specifically?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. It just says that no more than 2 adults shall occupy the the transient guest lodging unit. I used the wrong term.
Okay. That was not my understanding in terms of the application. I can limit it to 2 individuals, but as I mentioned, there's 2 bedrooms upstairs that could occupy 2 guests in each bedroom. So it's up to the council, and I will abide by any conditions.
Sure, and that's just a standard from the code, so I don't know if we can modify it through this body, if they would need a variance, so.
It's a use variance, but I mean, you can't vary use, and I don't know what that means in terms of varying the number. My thought is that it would need a change in the code.
Yeah.
But we can ask the solicitor. about that specifically, like how does that work?
Right.
So,
I'd like to introduce Deb Dixon. She's my domestic partner and should be operating kind of like chief person.
Could I address the council?
Certainly. Introduce yourself.
Oh, my name is Deborah Dixon. I'm curious if there's only 2 guests allowed.
2 adults.
2 adults.
Yeah.
And so children are allowed, because we would like to make this a family-friendly property.
Yeah. And I guess I would add, this is the condition, that's a standard one that I put on each of the other ones. I've been in front of you guys, so I'm not trying to.
Yeah,
I'm not
no,
singling you guys out.
I understand that.
Okay,
But
good. Just want you to not think
when
that.
I look at the different properties that are available as in Airbnb and the Verbo, I see, between, it can house up to 8 people. So I was just.
excuse me.
I was just
Thank you.
curious.
No comment.
So anyway, that's my only thing is that 2 adults, period, and okay, that's.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Then we are ready for any public comments. If you want to come forward and introduce yourself. Pardon?
So you're opening that public hearing?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm opening the public hearing.
Okay, my name's Mitzi Miller. I just know several Airbnbs, and is that standard practice in the past? Because I know several, it's more than 2 that they are having in their Airbnb.
In town?
Yeah,
That's the code in Yellow Springs.
well, it's not being followed then, so.
Not relevant to this hearing.
no.
Hello, I'm Laura Curlis. I live at 1118 Livermore Street, and Fred is my neighbor right to the north. And kind of far be it from me to tell him not to have a TGL, since I want to do the same. So my questions are mostly all about me. So in 2017, I applied and got a permit for, my ADU. That house was built in 1940, and there was an apartment on the back of the garage. I think Bob Baldwin had something to do with it. But anyway, then it fell into disuse. I gutted it when I moved in about 10 years ago, also about the same time as Fred. And intended, since it's a good space, it's about 580 feet, to rehab it into possibly an ADU, possibly for my son, and possibly a home office, and then maybe on weekends, TGL, transient guest lodging. I've invested a lot of money in that project. I've upgraded, all new electric, buried the electric, changed the pole, new water, had to put in a sewer line, so I had to get a new tap in, put in new windows, bricked up a window, basically got the whole interior ready for build out. The only thing it needs, got a water heater. The only thing it needs is HVAC, and then the build out of the interior of it. And I've been paying as I go. So I've invested about $50,000 in that unit. So it isn't finished. But when it is, I hope that I can use it as short-term rental. So what happens? So I'm going to let you sit with that, but I'm going to go back just briefly to his application, because what I read it wasn't entirely clear to me, because let's say he has a pull-out couch, 2 upstairs bedrooms, a total possibly, I wasn't aware of the limit on 2 adults, but it looks like you could have 6 if you somehow change the law, 6 adults, which then that would mean 3 off-street parking spaces. I don't know, the math didn't seem to work if the entire thing was occupied by adults. Anyway, so back to me. So if I finish my unit in 2024, can I use it for short-term rent, what used to be called short-term rental before the TGL? So it will be grandfathered in for short-term rental? No.
No.
Susan's saying no.
You would have to apply, and the code is 500 feet between transient guest lodging.
So all the short-term rentals that were approved before, they can't use, I mean, how are you doing that?
So I would say Meg can follow up
Yeah.
at another time.
I've already
because
spoken with her, explained this to her, but there's ways to move forward with the variance and.
A variance,
potentially,
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
I emailed her, she knows.
So, well, I didn't, that's the first time I heard the word variance, but, so, okay. So all owners who make this investment and don't get to you quicker than their neighbor can't do it. Thank you.
The limit for a conditional use is 2 years. You have to have constructed it and put it into action within a 2-year period. That's just code.
Yeah, well, so we hit COVID just about the time I was doing the whole project, and there was a 2-year lag. I got the sewer line in 2021, and so so I'll say I'm somebody who wants to do it as I have the cash, that's for sure. But, all right, thank you very much.
Any other comments on the conditional use application we have? Okay, then
So
we will close the public hearing.
Okay, cool.
Do you have a question?
So to this question of like the number of people and whatnot, is the best thing for people to do to contact Meg and talk about it? I understand it wasn't part of this hearing, but an issue came up, the question is out there. So folks, if people have questions, they could contact you to, about the number of, renters for short-term, for TGLs.
Like staying in one?
Yeah, like the question that was brought up of like if there's TGLs that have, that are not following the regulations.
Oh, yes, please, yes,
Okay.
yeah,
I'm
definitely.
just trying to just close the
I
loop
wasn't sure if you were
on what do
asking
people
that
do.
question or the question he said about if he wanted more than 2 adults staying in his, which I can look at. I'll talk to our attorney about that after this and see what ways. And then with Ms. Curlis's thing, same thing. I'm here to help her move through the process and steps that she needs to address her issues.
But they may also rent the properties, not as short-term rentals.
Right, long-term.
But long-term rentals. And then they could actually have more people in them, correct?
Yeah, we don't have any control over 30 days or more.
So that is certainly, and that there is a tremendous need in this community for rental housing, not transient guest lodging.
And if I remember, the long-term or transient guest housing lodging, it's only for stays for less than 30 days or something like that?
Yes.
Yeah, so long-term rental is basically stays there more than a month at a time, right? If you have people rotating through a rental seasonally, that's still considered long-term rental.
If it's more than 30 days, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I have another question for the council, Deborah Dixon. As far as those 2 adults, for example, we have a family and there's 6 adults in that family. And if we have that kind of family in the house, does that mean that 2 of our families have to, 2 of our relatives have to go somewhere else?
So because the public hearing is closed, we really can't have more discussion on the application.
Okay.
Since it's closed, because we have to let other people comment about your testimony as well, but I'm more than happy to answer those questions tomorrow, first thing in the morning, or even after this meeting. And I would probably have to talk to our attorney, because I haven't been posed this question before.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're at the point, did anyone have any more questions about this application for Meg? Would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve with the conditions.
With the 5 conditions?
With the 5 conditions that are on here. No more than 2 adults shall occupy the dwelling unit. Inspection by the Miami Township Fire and Rescue for the installation of smoke and carbon monoxide detectors must accompany the application. The detectors must be inspected by the fire department annually. Transient guest lodging permits are non-transferable. A change in ownership of the property will void the permit. Completion of the transient guest lodging registration with the finance department is required annually and prior to the initial occupancy, and a biannual reporting of all earnings must be returned to the finance department annually. Even if there were no earnings, a 3% lodging tax will be due with the reporting by April 15th and October 15th for the preceding 6 months annually.
I second the motion. Any other discussion? If not, let's have roll call.
Zaremski.
Yes.
DeVore Leonard.
Yes?
Green.
Yes.
Stiles.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, it's been approved. So we will move on then to our next agenda item, which is the zoning map amendment rezone application by Sandra Smith. And Meg, I'll let you talk about it.
All right, thanks. All right, so this is a zoning map amendment or a rezone application for 545 Dayton Street, submitted by Sandra Smith and Jean McKee. Adjoining property owners were mailed a notice at the public hearing on December 28th. Signs were posted on the property on December 29th, and a notice was published in the Yellow Springs News on December 22nd and 29th. I prepared a staff report that outlines the applicable code and staff findings that was sent to the Planning Commission and posted on our website on January 4th. The zoning map amendment application is a request to rezone the property from the Conservation District to Medium Density Residential, or RB, in order to construct a single-family home on the property.
And is there anything currently on the property?
Yes. The applicant's father purchased the property in 1982, and subsequently it was rezoned to conservation without their knowledge. We conducted research, staff did, and determined that the conservation zoning was inadvertently applied to the property, which is when the Bill Duncan Park got zoned to conservation. And there is an existing structure on the property. It'd been there since they purchased it, and they used it as personal storage since it was purchased. And they would like to demolish the existing structure and build a new single-family home for their own personal use, is my understanding. They can clarify if that's not correct. The rezone request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and village goals, since the council has adopted a goal of expanding housing options throughout the village, and the plan supports infill development. The proposed use is consistent with surrounding uses. Single-family homes adjoin the property on the east and are across the street on the south. And those properties are also zoned RB, the same zoning that they're requesting, so this is not a spot zone. The request also does not require expansion of public infrastructure, since the road, sewer, and water lines are all in the street and to the site. And so for all those reasons, and since the application meets the code criteria, staff recommends approval. And actually, in this instance, the Planning Commission, should they agree with my recommendation, it's a recommendation to the Village Council, so you recommend that the Village Council approve.
Okay. So this is the first step, and that will be then the final step?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions for Meg?
So this is basically correcting something that got inadvertently done.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Yeah.
And it took a little while to realize.
Would Sandra Smith or anyone like to speak?
Hello, I am Sandra Smith, and we kind of inadvertently discovered that it was conservation. We just assumed all along it was RB, like the rest of the surrounding properties. And so I was thinking about building on that land, and I discovered that I can't because it's conservation. So we're just trying to maximize our opportunities, that's all. We don't have any plans to do anything as of yet. And this is Jane. Do you have anything else you want to? Thank you. Any questions? Sorry.
No, and the fact that there's already an existing structure, that doesn't make any difference?
Once you tear it down, once you would demolish it, yeah, it would not be considered non-conforming anymore. I guess our code has language for non-conforming structures that can be used even if they're not in compliance, but since it's not usable and they want to demolish it, then,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Good question, though. They will still have to submit like a building permit.
Oh, yeah.
And zoning, yeah, so there's still more steps
Okay.
beyond this, but they wanted to get this taken care of.
Yep.
Okay.
So I'm just curious, to simply rezone it, is this coming to this body and getting approval? Does that then lead to it being?
It then goes to council, is what makes it.
Oh, I see.
We're
I
the
missed
first
that.
step, and then we're
It goes
making
to
a recommendation
and
to
they-
council.
Yeah. Okay, so we would make a recommendation. Gotcha.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
I guess
You're quite welcome.
in the process of the review, is this the only parcel that was messed up, or is there anything else that we need to clean up?
I don't think so, not that I'm
Okay.
aware of, yeah.
Cool.
There's not much around the village that's zoned that way, you know? Yeah.
And it's right next to Bill Duncan Park and the community gardens.
Yeah.
Okay, then we are going to go ahead and open up the public hearing for this. Is there anybody who would like to speak? And please introduce yourself and your comments.
My name's Mitzi Miller, and I live across the street from the McKees, and just want to support this decision that you move forward with the decision of making it a medium-dense residential area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Michael Wilson again. I've just got a couple of questions. One is, if this is a single-family unit, will the address be Dayton Street, or will it be the street on the other side?
The current address is 545 Dayton,
So it would remain that?
to my knowledge.
Okay. One other thing that seems related, but maybe it's not, that's bothered me for a couple of years, that sign that says Bill Duncan Park has been broken and missing. And I think we owe it to Mr. Duncan to put the sign back.
Well, I can talk to our Public Works interim village manager about that.
Okay?
Yeah.
So otherwise, I'm just a little frustrated because I've grown up in areas where there's new construction all the time. I move into a house built in '49, and I swear I've had 4 or 5 different houses built around me over the years, plus quad unit right behind me. So anyways, I still like living here. It's just been a little
Good.
frustrating
That's
with all the trucks and all that.
Great,
That's
thank
what
you.
matters.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, then I will close the public hearing. Any discussion among members?
Yeah. If the request is to rezone to residential B, I think, doesn't residential B allow more than a single unit house, right?
Yeah, and I discussed that with the applicant about the different options, but they pretty certain they want a single-family home, but they're also aware they can do a duplex.
Right, yeah, so that is the case, that the zoning would allow a duplex if that ever transpired. Yeah, okay.
Any other comments? Okay, are we ready for a motion? Well, I'm going to move that we approve to rezone the property at 545 Dayton Street from Conservation C to medium-density residential RB.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call.
So, just to clarify, you're moving to recommend to council that they rezone
Yes,
from
thank you.
RC
Yeah.
to RB. I was pretty sure that was what you meant.
Thank you.
DeVore Leonard,
Yes?
Zaremski,
Yes.
Greene,
Yes.
Stiles.
Yes. Okay, we've done the first step, so now we'll go to council.
Thanks.
Okay. Do we have any old business?
I guess the only thing I wanted to mention was, at the last meeting, we talked about, the transient guest lodging.
Yeah.
And I did do a little bit of research. I went and looked at all the different cities in the county and townships and didn't see much of adopted codes. I emailed Beaver Creek because someone had mentioned
I
that
mentioned
they okay, and they said they weren't going to put any restrictions. They're like similar to ours, like to limit the number or how far apart they were until maybe it became more of a problem or more interest in their community. They weren't having any problems presently.
Okay.
And we probably shouldn't say a lot about that until at a later point, if we have
Yeah.
a hearing and make the public aware of it, because I've heard quite a few comments after our,
Yeah, I think because the news article, it's really created a lot of interest too. So.
Yes. Okay.
So do we want to plan to have a hearing about this?
I would rather wait a few months.
Okay.
I don't think that we need to jump right into it.
Okay.
And we might even, I guess, we might also want to get some direction from council. Would they like us to be looking at it? Because they're the ones that directed us initially to make recommendations and have them pass. And so we might want to find out, does council want it revisited?
Actually, to be correct, Planning Commission saw that problem coming down the road, said, hey, we should regulate this.
Okay.
Sent that recommendation to council. Council said, no need. And about 9 months later came roaring back saying, you guys need to regulate. This is just a problem. So in fact, Planning Commission, because you see it coming, you're right on the front line. I would say you're well poised, and with direction from Meg, who's looking at how many applications does that differ. That if you see, I think we may need to tweak this. You're in the best position to make that call, I'd say.
Okay.
And not to say that council couldn't recommend it to you, but
Yeah. Well, council will ultimately be making the decision, approving it. So that's why I wondered if.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, then on new business.
Sorry, can I just make sure I understand? So, first of all, I wasn't on council when that happened.
Not your
Just
fault.
for the record.
You would never have done that.
That would never happen. No, so so just to make sure, because the last time when we talked about this last month, it was just like a sort of procedural, like let's check in about this kind of thing, right?
I'm just
checking to
getting
make.
sort of the results from how many we had, how things were going.
But it wasn't like when I think about it, like from a council perspective, it's not like anything that I've heard anyone talking about, which isn't the only reason that we would bring something up. I'd like to think we would also act proactively, strategically, if it made sense. But just in this case, there didn't seem like there was I'm not aware of that, if it is. And then with this body, if I understood where we were at the last meeting, the idea of waiting a few months at a minimum made sense, I think, just given that it didn't seem like there was a majority of interest in making changes. That's the way I interpreted our last conversation. It seems like there's stuff to talk about and stuff to think about. It's interesting and I think important for our community, but it didn't seem like there was like a thing right in front of us. Some of the questions around like, might we differentiate a new build versus
Conversion.
or a conversion or
existing.
ADU versus there were some questions that I think we could look into more, but the idea of like waiting a few months and then maybe sort of putting this as like a thing to talk to the planning and zoning staff about feels relevant to me. I'm just making sure, is that how y'all
It is.
interpreted
And
it?
if we're talking about it, I guess I would like us perhaps to look at, because my big issue is that we need more affordable housing in the community. And I think every transient guest lodging potentially reduces that, because it changes a unit that's already been used, or it will not be used as that. I'd like to see, is there a way that what can the village do to encourage people to make their units affordable housing? Are there a reduction in fees? Are there grants? Could they work with another organization in Yellow Springs to help fund making an affordable unit and then having, so many years? But that's just some, things I was thinking about.
Tax abatements, of some
There's a number of things. I also always wonder about the issue of that you can't have it metered separately, because when you have an apartment, on your property, that can be quite a issue, because those people may use more heat or whatever, water, and that can be hard on the family. So I guess I'd like to sort of know, why is it that we're not allowed to have a unit separately metered? Because that might increase the number of
So we're getting way down a rabbit hole,
Yeah.
and maybe this is something to talk about with Housing Committee, to ask Planning Commission to review some of those things if you feel like those are creating barriers. But once again, we don't want to go too far into this, because folks, that wasn't on the agenda. So
I know, I'm just throwing things out that I would like for us to keep in that conversation when we're talking about it.
So you said, the last time you said that you had turned away people because, the 500-foot rule, and is that continuing in the last month? Have you had more inquiries and people?
2 more.
So I am willing to, I think it's totally reasonable to wait and, on this, but I think that there definitely is, some issues, and this question about, so this one on High Street would have been a new build to be transient guest lodging, which may eventually turn into a long-term rental.
And it also fit within the regulations.
Yeah, and so it's just this idea that we need to, the idea that transient guest lodging is going to always be cannibalizing long-term rentals isn't necessarily true. It may actually be the other way around, that the opportunity to do transient guest lodging could actually bring in some capital for people who then turn them into long-term rentals. So I don't know that it's this idea that it's just the one way, or I'd like to know, like the other one on the Livermore Street, it wasn't cannibalizing a long-term thing. It was just splitting up a part of a house. That may turn into a long-term rental. So anyhow, this is a question. I think the sort of a view on this is, certainly the letter that we got was that it was going to, pull away long-term rentals, which is something that we don't want. But I don't know that that's necessarily true.
Okay.
So
why don't we plan on taking that up within 3-4 months?
Okay, April, May.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that.
Anything else? Okay, you have on new business, PC end of year report to council.
Yeah.
which just means it's that time.
Yeah.
And Meg writes it generally. That's your planning and zoning administrator reports out to council on a regular basis. Here's what planning commission's doing. That comes up regularly. So generally, either you get a heavy assist or you get, here's the frame up, and then it's traditionally been the chair who comes to council and presents the end of year report with a bunch of support from your planning and zoning administrator. So,
and she said it's basically kind of like sharing the number of types of applications. Oh, you've seen it before? I haven't.
So last year it was a review of what we've done over the year.
Yep. Okay.
and I can get you those.
And it's an opportunity then for council to ask any questions.
Okay. So we're thinking February, right? Didn't you schedule it or start?
I did put you on a council agenda just as a placeholder, and
Okay, so we're
And what was the date?
Here. I think it's February.
It's either the 5th or the
19th.
19th.
The 19th is not going to work for me because I'm leaving for Costa Rica.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
Be back
That's
for
a good
the
reason.
next planning commission meeting.
Pura vida.
Would you like the 5th?
The 5th
That's
would
a
be-
you question in terms of getting a report ready.
Probably we can try.
Okay.
Right? We can shoot for
February 5th.
And we just pull it off if you're not ready, so
Okay.
I'll change that.
Okay. Then the next item we have is to vote for the chair and the vice chair of the planning commission.
So to get all formal about it, does anyone wish to nominate anyone for chair?
I'll nominate Susan for chair. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
And as we learned recently on council, we actually don't need a second for a nomination. So are there any other nominations for chair? And hearing none, I'll go ahead and call the roll on having Susan serve as chair for yet another year. Zaremski.
Yes.
DeVore Leonard.
Yes?
Greene.
Yes.
Stiles.
I'll abstain. And so, Vice Chair, I'd like to nominate Stephen.
All right.
Okay, any other nominations for vice chair? It's almost like you guys had a plan or something.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go ahead and call the roll on that one. DeVore Leonard.
Yes?
Stiles.
Yes.
Zaremski.
Yes.
Greene.
I'll abstain.
All right. You guys are just peas in a pod. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Judy. So for our agenda planning for next month, do we have anything on that we know that's going to be coming?
No, just a variance. The variance is for BZA, so, nope, not right now.
Okay.
That could change though, so.
Yeah. Okay. Well then, if there's nothing else, then I'm going to move that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.